Why every successful civilization built its own suicide machine. History's collapsed empires did not fall because they were weak. They fell because they were too successful. Rome didn't lose to the barbarians. Rome lost to Rome. The Maya didn't vanish because of a single drought. They vanished because a single drought was all it took. And that pattern repeats again and again across so many continents that one man built an entire theory around it. His name was Joseph Tainter, and what he found should terrify anyone living inside a modern superpower. Here's the idea, in one sentence. Civilizations collapse, not despite their complexity, but because of it. Let's break down exactly how that happens. Point 1. Every problem gets solved the same way. Add more. A society starts small. A few farms, a few families, a simple chief. Then a problem shows up. Maybe it's a rival tribe. Maybe it's a bad harvest. The solution is almost never do less. The solution is always build more. Recruit an army. Appoint an official to manage food storage. Create a rule to prevent the next famine. Each fix works, but each fix also adds a new moving part to the system. Point 2. Complexity is not free. It has a bill, and that bill comes due every single year. An empire with one small army spends a small amount to feed and arm it. An empire with 10 legions spread across 3 continents spends unimaginably more. Every layer of bureaucracy needs salaries. Every mile of new road needs maintenance. Every irrigation canal needs constant repair. None of this is a one-time cost. It's a recurring tax on the entire society, forever, for as long as the system exists. Point 3. The returns start shrinking, even while the costs keep climbing. This is the part almost nobody sees coming. The first bureaucrat you hire might double your tax collection efficiency. The 10th bureaucrat barely improves anything, because the easy problems are already solved. The first irrigation canal turns desert into farmland. The 5th canal squeezes out just a tiny fraction more grain from soil that's already exhausted. Tainter called this declining marginal returns on complexity. You keep paying full price, but you keep getting smaller and smaller rewards. Point 4. Rome is the textbook case, and the numbers are staggering. By the 3rd century, the Roman Empire was drowning in its own administrative weight. To fund the army and the bureaucracy, emperors debased the currency again and again until Roman coins were barely silver at all. Taxes climbed so high that some farmers simply abandoned fertile land rather than keep working it. The empire didn't fall to one dramatic battle. It fell because the system needed more energy than the land could provide, and there was nothing left to squeeze. Point 5. The Maya proved this wasn't just a Roman problem. It's a human problem. In the jungles of Central America, Maya city-states built towering pyramids, precise calendars, and complex irrigation networks to support dense populations. For centuries, it worked beautifully. Then droughts hit, the kind the region had survived before. But this time, the cities had no spare capacity left. Every field was already in use. Every worker was already stretched thin. The complexity that let them thrive in good years gave them zero cushion in a bad one. Within a few generations, city after city was abandoned to the jungle. Point 6. This is where the phrase "too big to fail" turns darkly ironic. The bigger and more complex a system gets, the more essential every single piece becomes. Remove one bureaucrat from a tiny village, and life continues just fine. Remove one critical grain supply official from a sprawling empire, and famine can follow within months. Complexity doesn't just cost more, it makes failure more catastrophic because everything is now interdependent. One weak link doesn't just snap, it can drag the whole chain down with it. Point 7. Societies rarely choose to simplify voluntarily, even when they can see the wall coming. You'd think that once the costs of complexity outweigh the benefits, a smart civilization would just scale back, cut the bureaucracy, shrink the army, abandon the far-flung colonies. But almost none of them do this by choice. Why? Because every layer of complexity has a group of people whose entire livelihood depends on it existing. Officials don't vote to eliminate their own offices. Generals don't recommend disbanding their own legions. So the system keeps growing, past the point of diminishing returns, simply because dismantling it is politically almost impossible. Point 8. Collapse, then, isn't really a tragedy. Tainter argued it's often a rational, economic choice. This is the part of his theory that flips everything on its head. When a society collapses, the average person often doesn't suffer more. In many documented cases, ordinary people actually ate better, worked less, and had more freedom after the collapse of a rigid, expensive empire. The peasants funding Rome's endless bureaucracy weren't necessarily worse off once that bureaucracy was gone. Collapse in this light isn't the end of civilization. It's civilization, shedding weight it could no longer afford to carry. Point 9. The final trigger is almost never the real cause. It's just the last straw, a drought, a plague, a lost battle. Historians love to point at these events as the reason an empire fell. But Tainter's answer is different. These are just the shocks that any healthy, resilient society could absorb without much trouble. The real cause is the decades, sometimes centuries, of built-up complexity that quietly drained away all the slack, all the spare capacity, all the emergency reserves. By the time the drought hits, the system is already running on empty. The shock doesn't cause the collapse, it only reveals it. Point 10. This isn't ancient history. This is a live diagnostic tool. Look at any modern institution straining under layers of regulation nobody fully understands anymore. Look at supply chains so intricate that a single blocked canal can stall the global economy for a week. Look at bureaucracies so complex that fixing one small problem requires approval from a dozen different departments. Tainter's framework doesn't care what century you're in. It only asks one question. Is your system's complexity still paying for itself? Or is it just accumulating cost while the returns quietly shrink? So here's where that leaves us. Every civilization that ever built a bigger army, a denser bureaucracy, a more intricate economy was trying to solve real problems. And for a while, it always worked. That's the trap. Complexity doesn't announce itself as dangerous. It arrives disguised as progress, one reasonable decision at a time, until the day a random shock hits a system with no room left to absorb it. If you love uncovering the hidden mechanics behind why civilizations really rise and fall, this is exactly the kind of story this channel exists to tell. Subscribe if you want to understand the world in a way most people never bother to look at. And the next part of this story